Hello. Yeah. Okay. So India has actually set a very ambitious target of achieving 30% electric vehicle penetration by 2030. However, currently the EV penetration in India is very low at around 5% in two-wheelers, 7% in three-wheelers, 6% in buses, and 1% in PVs. So one of the major issues which the industry is currently facing is the absence of a local ecosystem in the supply chain overall. So our esteemed panelists here today will be sharing more insights on optimizing the EV supply chain. A warm welcome to all the panelists here. Um, Localization has always been a strong mandate for the India's automotive industry due to numerous inherent advantages. And the COVID-related global disruptions and the geopolitical tensions have only reinforced the need to have strong local supply chains in the ecosystem. However, if we see for the overall EV, currently the localization levels are very low at around 20 to 30%. And more so, the penetration of localization is higher on the chassis components, which are the least technology upgradation and they are manufactured locally. While the battery cells, which have a very large amount of investments and are technology and capital intensive, are being largely imported. So, Mr. Loya, if I may just come to you. So, what are your views on the challenges being faced by the industry towards increasing localization of EV components?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So, as far as Indian EV industry is concerned, two to three major changes was has happened in gasoline vehicle with that of electric vehicle. One has been battery, motor, controller. These are the three major components which are being, changed or replaced from a IC vehicle. Out of these three, battery constitutes almost 50% of the vehicle costs. So, if you really want to say the kind of percentage of localization what is required, you need to localize the battery pack. We have been in constant discussions with the ministries from almost 15 years now. I have been into this industry, and we have always been pushing them so that they can, put some investments in PSU so that they can start cell manufacturing. But we didn't saw any ray of hope from them, and now we are in a stage where we are seeing that the cell manufacturing is gathering some pace, and very soon we would be India would be manufacturing their own cells. So that is one of the major milestones which I think which will be taken care of in next 2 to 3 years maximum. Apart from that, if we talk about motors and controllers, India is very much poised to make sure that we have high level of manufacturing capabilities as far as motor and controllers are concerned. But again, specifically for EVs, the product was not there, so it was not of a automotive grade. But as it is gathering pace in India, a lot of startups, a lot of established player for motors and controllers are also into that space, and a lot of innovation is already happening. So what I feel that once the pace in localization, once the pace in increasing the on-road vehicle numbers, the kind of numbers what we are sharing from last 3 years, it has been drastic change. What are the changes you are talking about? Whether in buses, cars, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, this has all happened. Apart from three-wheelers, rest of the industry, what you see is in just last 3 to 4 years only. But in electric vehicle industry is there in since 2007, 2008. So these changes are happening because of once the government has a push by either in the form of subsidy, has a focus by giving PLI, making sure India has a high level of integration and high level of localization. These kind of things definitely take space of their own. And I definitely see in coming time that the localization will happen. A lot of manufacturing companies are happening. And once you have the end product, which is ready to be used on an automotive, the component and supply chain for rest of the components will also develop. Majorly, if you see even today, we don't have any manufacturing capabilities for the semiconductors, chips, and everything. These are all imported. So we are also seeing that the pace has been ensured that those kind of manufacturing capabilities also start in India, and we see those kind of once these things gather pace, we will definitely see these kind of manufacturing happening. So I think we are very much on track, and we can definitely, with the help of both the PLIs, especially for semiconductors manufacturing, battery manufacturing, we will be in a stage in next 2 to 3 years. We have also identified lithium reserves, which will be very helpful and very important for our supply chain perspective. Once we have all these things in place, we will see good pace in making sure that the minute component is also manufactured in India. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, sir. That was quite insightful. While you talk about this battery manufacturing localization, but India does not really have reserves of some of these most important lithium-ion components like lithium, cobalt, nickel, etc. And we are still largely dependent on the imports. So, overall, how do you see this as a challenge in terms of the battery localization going forward?
So as far as battery is concerned, as I mentioned, it is almost 40 to 50% of the vehicle costs. Already we are seeing a lot of things are happening as far as new technological developments in the batteries also are taking place. We have just heard some news as far as the sodium ion technology, aluminum based technology in battery, in lithium ion battery. Then we have options of even water-based battery packs and everything. So all those things are already happening. Cobalt, lithium, till now it has not been procured, and NMC and is also, we like a lot of companies are also planning where they get away with the cobalt right now. So these kind of supply chain will definitely come up once we have the manufacturing facility or manufacturing capability of the last products. We have seen a lot of companies are already gathering pace. We have seen big giants like Nalco is also referring about copper, about aluminium, and all those important ores which is required to manufacture battery pack. Once we have these kind of requirements and the chain is already developing, we will definitely see the ray of hope in manufacturing battery packs in India.
Sure. Yeah. Dr. Mukherjee, if I can just come to you, what in your views are the EV manufacturers? How are they leveraging the local sourcing and partnerships with the domestic suppliers to optimize their supply chains and reduce dependency on imports?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kinjal. And I think the success of any manufacturing industry, and particularly automotive industry, is heavily dependent on its supply chain. How well developed is your supply chain? How robust is the supply chain? So, EV, we are still in the early days. There are several challenges, and also the main players are now getting into it, as we see in two wheelers, three wheelers. The big people, I mean, the big four of let's say two wheeler, Hero, Honda, Bajaj, TVS. I mean, all of them have announced their plans. They have products, ready to be rolled out. So this supply chain will develop over next, let's say, about 3 to 5 years, and that is where I see the inflection will come, and growth will be exponential. Now the point here is that what drives this auto components industry. If you go back around 40 years ago, when Maruti came in and they brought their suppliers, Japanese, etc., and helped them set up. So that kind of kick-started this whole auto components industry, and today it is about 70, $80 billion industry, very, very robust, mature. Now, who are the people who are best positioned to set up or migrate to EV? These are the auto component players who will migrate, and they have their own plans. But apart from that, this is a game changer industry, and this is what I would like to emphasize, that very soon we will see a lot of innovation in not only the technology but also how the vehicles are being built. Okay, there is a very interesting report by EY recently. It has come, and it talks about the new tierization of the supply chains. Like traditionally, you have tier one, tier two, tier three, and it is saying that you will have tier 0.5. You know that will be the biggest threat to tier ones. And who are the people who are going to play here? They are going to be the tech companies like Google and Nvidia, and these are the guys who will become the main supplier to the OEM. Okay, and this is how the technology play is going to play out in this new world of automotive. And all the hardware oriented suppliers, see, today we are very hardware oriented. You know, there is a sheet metal industry, there's an aluminum casting industry, there's a machining industry, plastic, and so on and so forth. But I think this whole hardware mentality needs to change and go to the next level, which is where I think the leapfrog technologies will happen. Artificial intelligence, for example, and there are some very interesting startups working here. So, to answer your question specifically, how the OEMs are leveraging, I think OEMs are the legacy, the OEMs, the established big four or big five. They are making their own strategies, whether to do what to do in house, what to outsource, etc. And the point here is that everybody is starting from zero. Okay, whether it is battery or powertrain and all, that is where I think alliances will happen. And uh, there is a chance for all these startups with their breakthrough technologies or products to get aligned with the OEMs, and we are seeing it. You know, Yamaha invested in a startup, Honda Japan invested in a new startup in Canada, and there are so many other big Japanese companies looking for these kind of alliances. So I think this is where the new world of auto and auto components will emerge, where these big players will, align with the new emerging technologies or startups with innovative products. And then this whole auto supply chain will will pan out. So I think all of them are looking for alliances. They are also strengthening their supply chain, and it's going to be entirely different from the way the traditional IC vehicles are being built. For example, you mentioned lithium and cobalt, and there are so many other even rare earths, etc. So it's, you got to track the commodity. So it's going to be commodity based value chain. So most of the OEMs today don't know, how futures are done and how commodity market takes, happens. So, and same goes with the on the IT side. See, half of the vehicle by value is today electronics, IT. So and that's where you will need the people. You need the human resources. So I think it's not going to be only the part makers only. It is also going to be a combination of all these technologies coming together and aligning with inter industry players, like I talked about the IT majors, etc. So it's going to be a quite an interesting you know industry now.
Sure, sir. I think definitely, I mean, OEMs have been driving tier one localization, but I think the localization at the tier two and tier three level is yet to be achieved. So I think that's what we'll have to see going forward as well.
No, as I said, this whole hardware level industries, whether it is metal or aluminum, ferrous or whatever, will be at a lower side of the whole pyramid. On top are going to be basically, the software which is going to drive this vehicle, and typically we call it software-driven vehicle. So it's all going to be, and that also going to be in three layers. In the bottom layer is these sensors and actuators, which are basically the hardwares in that industry. Then there is a middleware which interacts with this and extracts the information. And then top is going to be the application software. Okay, so this is how your software strategy also has to develop, and you have to set up your software supply chain according to it. Who will do it? So I don't know.
Sure. Right. Mr. Fanish, what in your view are currently the inefficiencies or challenges in the supply chain ecosystem? And what do you think is the role of OEMs, the suppliers, and other stakeholders in the entire ecosystem in enabling the entire localization efforts?
Sure. I think I'll divide the question into two parts, and probably I'll take an example of a very well established automotive, the ICE automotive supply chain, I think, which has had over 100 years of evolution as compared to, let's say, EV supply chain. I'm so sorry. As compared to EV supply chain, which is still in its early stages. And I think the biggest problem that comes is forecasting, and also the cost of raw materials. We are seeing an evolution where the cost of raw materials or cost of producing battery packs is reducing. With that comes challenges that are inherent to how the demand would fluctuate. We would see that more people, just because the asset is being a bit more affordable and subsidies are going down, there are always ups and downs in the demand for these vehicles, and because of that comes the problem of forecasting. And if, let's say, your supply chain is not able to predict how much to indent, how much to procure, how much to ship, how much to stock, um, you don't actually get to do a very good job. And this is a learning for all companies, and at this time I think uh, the biggest advantage that any supply chain should have is its ability to be agile and its ability to change and source components or materials at a moment's notice. And I think we as an organization in Porter, we are spearheading that change. We are making a lot of company supply chain a bit more agile. We are reducing the turnaround times of getting a vehicle from a matter of days to a matter of few hours, or even few minutes for that matter. And a lot of it has helped in the advancement of research and development, reduction of downtimes, and this is not just about OEMs. This is not just about battery manufacturers. It's also applicable to the entire ecosystem. You have charge point operators who essentially have to keep their charging points uptime at an optimal level. Otherwise, public chargers would fall out of public's. And there was this one particular study that was done. Ki HP's fast charging network is having only about 50 to 60% uptime, and all of this doesn't give a lot of confidence to people who want to switch to electric. And this is where I think we are creating that changes. These are the challenges that exist in the supply chain ecosystem.
Sure. Thank you so much. Uh, so the government of India has announced several incentives for localization, like the 18,000 crore PLI program, the phased manufacturing program under the FAME 2, and it has also tried to curtail imports by tripling the customs duty on the imports of battery packs to around 15% and doubling of the import duty on the lithium ion cells to around 10%. Further, there are certain some states specific EV policies too, so as to fuel the adoption of EVs in India. So, Mr. Loya, how do you think are these government policies and incentives supporting the localization of the EV manufacturing in India?
So again, every market is a when you're talking about a transition which need to happen from one category of product to another category of product. This is a transition. So the industry, automotive industry, is seeing a transition where the product is being shifted from IC vehicles to electric vehicle. But if you really want to have this transition at a faster pace, you need to have benefits which need to be shared with the manufacturers so that they can ensure this transition is available to the public at large. And being Indian individuals and consumers are mainly price centric and price driven. So price can be a role key important player where it can drive the demand for a consumer to switch from IC vehicle to electric vehicle. Being it's a new technology, lot of apprehensions are there, whether you talk about raise anxiety, servicing, end of life of the product, how they are going to charge the product. So to answer these questions, if you want to make sure that the like customer put all these questions and take a buying decision of this kind of thing, then they need to come up with a cost reduction on the product as compared to IC vehicle. And that's why the FAME has come into picture, so that it can create a demand side requirement from the consumer by reducing the price, and make sure the customer starts adapting the product so that they can have a feel, they can have understand how is it differentiated, what kind of benefits a consumer is getting. But again, to drive these kind of scenario, the demand incentive is created so that the product are sold in the market. And once you have a demand from the consumer side, definitely the supply chain will improve. Why? Because there are a number of suppliers who want to manufacture those products. They are just sitting on the side of the shore to ensure or to evaluate what is the right time to get into this. So once you have these demands coming up now, if you see from last 4 years, this number was less than 1%. Now it has reached up to 3 to 4% in two-wheeler sector. In three-wheeler sector, it has almost 40 to 50% of the market share is in three-wheeler sector. So these kind of things, PV, we have already reached to 1%. So these kind of changes will somewhere pushing the local tier 1 manufacturer to look into electric vehicle component manufacturing being a key role. If you overall also see, one of the perspective of electric vehicle is, apart from the 3 to 4 key important components, rest of the vehicle is almost the same at par with any of the gasoline vehicle. We are using the very similar suspension, the manufacturing facilities are very similar kind of clusters, similar kind of wiring harnesses. Only the tweaking happens when it comes to how it to be connected, what kind of data need to be collected, what kind of information need to be shared, how need to be displayed. So only these kind of changes are happening. Rest of the ecosystem for the vehicle, apart from these three, instead of using gasoline fuel, if you see, you are using battery pack, which is already there in the vehicle. So these side of the changes are only being done. Rest of the component side of changes are almost the same at par. We are not using any change in suspension is concerned. We are using just optimizing it to a much better comfort of the consumer, much better utilization and reduction on that. And if you even see these, why these kind of benefits are seen upfront. The whole idea is that the IC vehicle, the efficiency of a IC vehicle, is only operates somewhere between 18-19% to 24-25%, while on an electric vehicle it operates at an efficiency of 80% already. So the kind of changes or the kind of technology which is already being evolved in electric vehicle is much ahead than what we see in IC vehicle, and that's why those kind of things are just being carrying forward. What kind of efficiencies, manufacturing efficiencies, which are already in place in IC vehicles, are being taken forward in electric vehicle. Battery pack is definitely one of the key components. Either we can separate it. If you separate a battery pack, the cost of the vehicle will be much lesser in certain cases where we talk about in two-wheeler. If you reduce the battery pack or remove the battery pack, the cost of the electric vehicle as compared to IC vehicle will be almost cheaper. uh, Once you increase the size of the battery pack, you want a higher range, you want a quicker, very high efficient vehicle, then these kind of things becomes at par with the gasoline vehicle. But apart from that, it's very much cheaper. Because why? Battery is a source of energy, and we are carrying fuel with the vehicle for next 3 years, 4 years. You just need to recharge electrolyte, or make sure that you are handling in the right manner. Apart from that, you are having vehicle battery life for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and we are seeing technology which is evolving, where we can say that this vehicle can run with the battery pack life of 10 years also. So those are changes are definitely evolving. This will, in fact, they are evolving much quicker than what it was supposed to happen. Yes, there has been a time lag of like 10, 15 years, but I think down the line we will see a very good future for electric vehicle, especially in two-wheeler and three-wheeler segment.
Sure, sir. That's insightful. Dr. Mukherjee, do you think that the stringent criterion which are placed by these government regulations in terms of availing the incentives, that is actually creating a roadblock, like say in case of e-two-wheelers, you need 50% minimum localized content. However, India does not really have those domestic reserves in place. That's why the OEMs typically have to keep importing. So, do you think these are the key roadblocks in availing these incentives, which are in turn delaying the adoption of EVs in India?
No, no, I don't think so. See, of course, every OEM will have to map out its own supply chain and the sourcing of it, But if you see the supply, the content per vehicle, then of course the battery and the powertrain are the major ones. But there are, the 50% is other parts also. So you see, I understand battery, and because we don't make cells, we have a material constraint. These are the factor conditions, where we are negative. But what about the electronics, the power electronics, the chargers, the motors, and all? Even IC vehicles have so many motors. So why are we importing motors? Why are we importing the powertrain? The problem is OEMs have not invested in the design, development, R&D, and people are in a hurry to reach the market. The startups, maybe they have their own reasons to excite the investors and raise money. I have nothing against that. Let them raise money, let them raise tons of money. But you see, the fundamental of this business lie on the robustness of your supply chain. This is where R&D comes in. This is where technology plays a major role. If you look at the IC engine, the way they plan their platforms, 5 years it takes to develop an engine and tune it. And that's how the big OEMs do. A very large Japanese OEM has been testing their battery swap in India for last 7 years. 7 years they haven't sold a single battery pack. They are saying that even if one battery fails or a fire happens or some other problem happens, then they can't afford a bad name. So this is how they take the innovation seriously. This is how they take the product development and robustness and safety seriously, which is not the case, at times here. So I think, let's not classify them as roadblocks and find a way to import from China. Okay, you can import anything from China. China can supply you a space shuttle as well. But the point here is that if you have an ambition to become a serious long-term OEM, then you must, figure out a way to have as much localization as possible, and have a long-term plan. Of course, you need to sustain. It's a big dollar game. You need to keep invest. So that's a separate, strategy. But don't take these shortcuts.
Sure. Yeah. Um, so we talked about a lot of challenges in the supply chain, in the charging infra, etc. Mr. Fanish, how are you and the industry trying to overcome these challenges in the supply chain and the overall ecosystem at this point in time?
Well, our entire vehicle mix, the kind of vehicles that we use, let's say to carry any product, depends largely on what is there in the market, and predominantly market is IC, and we feel that there is a huge opportunity here for the new age companies to innovate and bring about changes in how the vehicle mix is in the market. Take for example, almost 70% of intracity movements does not even utilize the vehicle to 100%. There is a huge amount of underutilization where loads are not, let's say the stated load or the GMV is around 750 kilos, but we find multiple times that loads as low as 200, 250 kilos are being sent in the vehicle. Now that's inefficiency. I mean, right now you might argue that there aren't many vehicles that are having a load carrying capacity of less than 500 kilos, but then that's where the opportunity lies, and I think it's a very clear signal that there is a very good market for vehicles that are between the 20 to 500 kilo weight carrying capacity, and that's where we would need a lot of OEMs to innovate and bring about these vehicles. I'm not saying it is not there, it is there, but there's not a lot of coordinated effort. Everyone is talking about how to maximize range, how to reduce charging times, but actually what's going on in the market is a bit different. They need vehicles that can be priced lower, thus bringing down the cost of ownership, as well as making a vehicle that can help carry these kind of smaller loads from an intra-city perspective. So there are a lot of things, and it's great that we are having forums such as these, where we can come together, discuss ideas, discuss our learnings from being in the market, and I think the need for the hour is some sort of a vehicle that can sort of carry this intermediate load carrying capacity that can itself improve the effectiveness of this entire supply chain.
Sure. Thank you. Uh, we at Tekra have done some analysis about what is the revenue potential of the entire EV component industry. So we believe that for the e-two-wheeler components, the market potential would be somewhere around 33,000 to 39,000 crore by FY25, and would further increase to around 1,40,000 crore by 2030. And the same for EPV components is around 14,000 to 15,000 crore by FY25, and would further increase to 64,000 to 68,000 crore by around FY30. Mr. Loya, I would want to understand from you that if you were to achieve these kind of localization levels, how would it contribute overall to reducing the cost of the vehicle ownership, in help in India in increasing its competitiveness, and overall accelerate the adoption of EVs in India?
So, if it is the point that will India be cost effective in producing uh, electric vehicle, then I would say very strongly yes. Purely because if you see in today's world, even with IC vehicles, again I'm going back to IC because that is the closest benchmark to talk about. India, in most of the cases, I would say, is better both in quality and price aspect. The only difference why still China is ahead, because they believe in price more than on quality, and they have the gradation they want to sell to each and everything. While on the other side, India is very much quality conscious. Whether you talk about, I'm talking about the complete supply chain from OEM side to even the suppliers. And if you don't identify, then definitely there are changes or problems which you tend to receive from the OEM side and the supplier side and everything. So India is very much cost efficient, cost effective, and the only challenge is cost is very much linked to the scale of production, the economy of scale, the kind of numbers you are doing, and what kind of results you are getting. So if you are producing, or the demand is there, which can be created or which is required to cater the manufacturing facility, definitely it will be cost effective. There is no doubt about it. We, if you see, it took 40-45 years from when Maruti started, or before that even Ambassador and Hindustan Motors, everything, products were there. But actual revolution happened when Maruti came into India. And since then, we have seen a tremendous change in the complete ecosystem when it comes to manufacturing of components, key components, parts, and everything. A lot of infrastructure has developed, and now India is one of the few top economies which are cost effective in nature because of our strength, all man, material, quality, and because of the manufacturing capabilities which has already developed in India. And Indian government don't want to miss the bus for electric vehicle. And that's why they have come up with these PLI policies and incentive policies. And also, what we are seeing is something definitely related to the kind of adoption happens or the migration happens from IC vehicles to electric vehicles. Once we have these kind of things, as mentioned by Mr. Deb also, that if we grow with the time, if we grow with the multiple fold increase in the demand of electric vehicles in India, these kind of numbers what you are talking about will be minimum on that side, because anyways the key components will be developed, manufactured in India, adaptation will happen, migration will happen, and then new technology is also coming up. So all those things will definitely require investment, and once you have the demand for electric vehicle, on-road vehicles, then definitely you will see the supply chain will also grow dramatically. So again, they are directly related to each other.
Sure. Thank you. Dr. Mukherjee, in your initial comments, you did talk about automation and people. So, how do you think is currently the talent availability in India? Because I think one of the major challenges is also going to be the skill development, technology transfer, and quality assurance in this entire EV localization of supply chain. So, what do you think are the key challenges on this, and how can these be addressed?
Yeah, if you ask me, out of the four challenges, technology challenge, then we have the economic challenge and the HR and the supply chain challenge. Out of these, the biggest challenge is the human resource related challenge, because, and it is at every level. Entry level engineers need to know what is the requirement of the EV industry today, and look at the hiring, look at the way, the talent or the engineering knowledge that OEMs are hiring today. They are all hiring network engineers, embedded software professionals, AI specialists, data security, etc. It is dramatically different from what it used to be earlier, like automobile engineers or mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, etc. So I think that's at the entry level. I'm talking of the engineering, and below also there is a huge problem on skilling. But on the knowledge side, this is a gap. In the middle and senior level, I mean, they're kind of neither here nor there, and I think they are at the biggest risk, because it is very difficult to educate yourself at that level, and also unlearn and then relearn the new technologies and knowledges. So I think the biggest challenge India faces today in this whole transition is the human resources side, where in academia, the problem in India is academia and industry are on a divergent path all the time, and there is a lot of mistrust, so to say. So I work very closely with a couple of IITs and another university down south. So the problem is, this change. Maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, we will not be talking about this issue. But today, any and a profound change like this, where the entire industry is going from one fuel to the completely different fuel, different technology, different manufacturing processes, material sciences, etc. So there is a huge knowledge gap. The only way to solve this is, the industry and academia have to work together, and academia has to change at a faster rate. uh, and industry has to play that part, and particularly at the blue collar level, where a lot of in-house training centers, etc., will have to be created, and the polytechnics and ITIs, etc., which essentially fill up this pipeline of talent, will have to be brought in sync with the industry requirements. So I think that that's a big challenge, and the biggest, if you ask me, out of these four.
Right, true, true. Um, Mr. Fanish, just a follow up to what Dr. Mukherjee was answering. So, what do you think is going to be the implication of this entire localization initiative on job creation, economic growth, and sustainability in the Indian automobile industry? And how do you think various stakeholders can collaborate to maximize the benefits from this?
I think I second to what Dr. Mukherjee just said about this being one of the biggest challenges and the dichotomy that we see where in application and what we read or what the academics is and it is definitely has a very large implication when it comes to having a real life application in the current market. We see huge number of companies who say that the current degrees are do not equip them to actually use the skills in what is required on the market, and a large part of it is there in the entire supply chain industry as well. We definitely need good drivers. We need people who can use these tools or properly, who have been trained to use these vehicles in a proper drivable manner. Coming from a city like Bangalore, we have seen umpteen instances where riders are not exactly using it in a proper manner, and a great deal of it goes in education, making people aware how exactly we can teach these kind of skills to the entire industry.
Sure, thanks. I think before I open the floor to the audience for Q&A, I would like one closing comment from each of you on the outlook for the EV localization and supply chain optimization in India. And what do you think are the strategies that can be implemented to accelerate the same?
So, I think the most important thing which is here is demand should be created. Once you have demand, we as a business house or any business men can definitely will like to stand there to fill the gap wherever it is. So, our focus, government focus, or the OEM focus should be to create as much demand as possible. Definitely, because once demand is created or incentivized, then if you provide incentive, it will bridge the gap of price between an IC vehicle and electric vehicle, and that will create further requirement. We have seen that companies like Ola, Bajaj, everyone have reduced prices lately, last month or so. So these kind of things will definitely create better demand, and once you have demand, the numbers will grow, it will increase, it will give more economy of a scale, efficiency in the system, will reduce costs, and definitely it will create a ecosystem or will create a change cycle again, so that further demand can be created. So that should be the focus for both the government and OEM, and we also are on the same lines where we can try to create demand first. That is our key.
Sure. Yeah, Dr.
No,
Mukherjee.
I think we talked about challenges. I see this the other side of it. The opportunity is huge. See the auto components industry today. Out of $70 billion dollars, we last year exported about $30 billion. If you see the commodities that we exported, more than 60% are the engine powertrain parts, and the cooling system part, which are going to be obsolete. So we are actually staring at a big problem, 10 years down the line, because most of the markets there would have shifted to non-IC fuel. So I think look at this as an opportunity for not only domestic but export markets as well. Something that really did not happen in the IC era. I mean, many countries, I mean, the big successful companies here, Japan, Korean, they import almost nothing from India. So those are the opportunities waiting to be tapped for the auto components industry. We need to invest in the technology and the whole innovation part of it, and that is where I'm very upbeat on the work being done by some of the startups, and it's great, and the way they are bringing these technologies together uh, uh, into automobile space. So I think this whole the ecosystem, once it comes up, I don't see them as a challenge. The whole the scale tilts towards the opportunities. That's my thought.
Sure. Yeah. Mr. Panish?
I think we have seen a huge paradigm shift when it comes to how traditional IC OEMs used to, supply to their customers. There was a proper dealership channel, and all vehicles would go through the dealership channel. I think large electric OEMs made it direct to customer, forcing auto OEMs now to start with the same direct to customer policy. You had repair at doorstep as another new yeah, new change that came into the market. Otherwise, always any vehicle servicing would have to be done again at a dealership or in an authorized workshop. So all of these are the different changes that are coming in. This is the new way of how mobility and auto systems are evolving into. And I think the need of the hour would be that the supply chain also would have to evolve in a very same way.
Sure. I think to sum up, in order to achieve the target of EV penetration and accelerate the transition towards EV deployment, a combination of various things, policy support from the central and state governments, infrastructure development, technology innovation, and even creating consumer awareness is going to be very essential and critical. I would like to thank all the panelists for their insights, and I will now open the floor for any Q&A that the audience would have.
Um, yeah, Raghav Vahi here. I think Dr. Mukherjee spoke about the training and education aspect of an upskilling aspect. Any more points and any more sort of suppose somebody were to address this training problem, how do you start? Which customer segment would you start with, and so on. If you could just espouse a little bit more on this opportunity, that would be nice.
Training. See, as I said, the gap is at all the levels, whether it is blue collar worker level, then supervisors, engineers, and then okay, the senior level. I think the now these problem is what to do about it and how to go about it, right? And I think that's the question that you asked. I think the only way to solve this is map out the exact requirements of the industry, what we need, where are we falling short, where are the problems. And it's all going to be technology driven process. So and the roles are vastly changing. Earlier, a guy will come with a spanner and a screwdriver to repair your vehicle. Today he comes with a laptop to diagnose the problem. So I think the course content, the curriculum needs to be changed, the course content needs to be changed. There has to be a practical aspect of it, how the EV is different from the IC engine, and what needs to be done in terms of servicing, repairs, troubleshooting, etc. And that is how you need to start from ground zero. Don't try to convert an IC curriculum into EV. I mean, that's what I think. And that is where the industry and the academia or institution or any startup who comes up with this idea of giving training to the talent pool is should start from there. One is that make them employable, and then uh, you know how and what are the specific areas where we need to train them. Uh, I think that's how you need to plan this entire process.
Good afternoon. This is Naveen from Hero Motor Corp. I just have one query. You just gave an example that that IC engine had a number of motors. Still, we are actually importing the motors from China as a huge boost to the startup to take out the investment. Same thing goes for the supplier also. Like for the IC engine, we had n number of suppliers, and as for the EV, the motors will be one. The number of suppliers would be reduced. So, what do you think? What would the way forward for the supplier? Just you told there is a ample opportunities for the suppliers. As a great paradigm shift is going to happen. And last question: how do you think incentive is going to help in that?
I didn't get it.
Okay,
I
I'm repeating my question. We are having a transition from IC to EV,
right.
right? So I was just saying ki likewise in the IC or likewise for IC bike, we have n number of motors. Similarly, we have the n number of suppliers.
Right.
Now for the EV, we have got one motor, we have a limited suppliers. And even in the case of EV, we are actually importing from China, unlike the localization which is right now in the IC. So my question was that what would be the way forward for the supplier industry of our country, and how do you think the incentive structure is going to help in that?
Yeah, I think maybe I can add and the others can probably contribute to it. So, like I was mentioning initially as well, that even if say one were to go one step ahead in localization of the components and get into battery manufacturing, etc., the base raw materials which are the for the lithium ion cells, which is lithium, cobalt, nickel, etc., that still will be dependent on imports from China. So, to that extent, we will continue to have dependence on the imports, but still we'll be able to localize a significant part of the entire EV supply chain from the 20 to 30% currently. It's only the base raw materials that we will be importing if at all we achieve that kind of localization. To this extent, yes, I mean, for setting up, say, a battery manufacturing facility, I mean, the investments are going to be very huge. I think minimum economical size for a battery manufacturing facility would be somewhere around at least a 20 gigawatt watt facility. And 1 gigawatt facility, 1 gigawatt setup requires around 400 to 500 crore of investments. So the investment requirements are significantly large. To that extent, I think these PLI incentives and the incentives for the advanced cell chemistry, batteries, etc., those would help reduce these initial capital investments that will go into the battery manufacturing, etc. So the initial capex of the vendors or the OEMs who would get into these component manufacturing, that would definitely reduce with the help of these incentives. Yeah, if anyone would want to add on it.
No, I think this whole suppliers strategy needs to be recalibrated for the new industry, and it's not that ICs are going away altogether. I personally don't believe that the IC will go away. Every OEM will have to decide on these, the strategy, the fuel mix strategy. What percentage of it will be diesel, petrol? Tomorrow, hydrogen will come, etc. So, now these are the new opportunities. For example, in EV, it is not only motor. There are a whole lot of other paraphernalia that goes into a EV, and it is also fuel agnostic. For example, the the software portion of it, the IT portion of it is model agnostic, fuel agnostic. All the modern vehicles have that. So this is where I think the suppliers who are desirous of playing a long-term role in this industry will have to map out the opportunity and the play for them, and what it needs to be done to play in that space. Whether it is a software part of it or hardware part of it, and so many common areas would be there. Um, so I think EV opens up a lot of opportunities. It is of course challenging, but anything new you need to do, there is always a challenge.
So one thing to add up on this very simple example, what we have seen with Nokia. I think if they continued what they took decision of continuing to the same old technology and everything, we see no one using Nokia anymore. So the same thing can happen for the component supplier and for the OEMs also. If we don't move with the need, with the changes, the technology, new evolving technology which is coming up, then the end will definitely will be there. And I think the individual, the company owners or the business owners will be responsible for the same. It's better to adapt and move forward.
I think there's one more question there. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mayank. I have a question for Mr. Prakash. You were mentioning about form factors and the need to have more form factors because a lot of vehicles have utilization which are far lesser than what their capacities are. And I'm guessing you're talking about commercial
Commercial vehicles.
commercial vehicles.
That's right.
So I guess there is some sort of form factor adjustment that is already being done. That's why we have LCVs and MCVs and LCVs. But are you meaning to say that there is room for more form factors? That's the first question. And what would be the large use cases for some of them? So let's say if you were to pinpoint on the top form factor that is missing in the market, what would that be from a porter's perspective?
Sure. So this is purely from an intracity perspective, and intracity movements are largely down to on-demand, just-in-time sort of movements from point A to point B within a city, and so the vehicle mix that we have is the highest. I'll come from the top. Is something like a 3.5 ton 14-feeter vehicle, coming down to a 9-feeter, which can carry up to 2 ton, 2 to 2.5 ton. Then your very ubiquitous, Boleros and Tata Aces of the world, which is anywhere between 1.5 ton to 750 kilograms, under a ton capacity. And then you have three-wheelers, which is where a lot of EV manufacturers come in, especially with their L5 vehicles, which can carry up to 500 kilograms. Now, below that, there is nothing. You then have a two-wheeler, which also doubles up as a goods carrying capacity, but it cannot carry more than 20 kilos. So you have this gap between 20 to 500 kilos, and which is where we have seen that there is a huge scope. Uh, Informally, I mean, there are a lot of markets, especially up north, in Delhi, in Chandigarh, in Jaipur, where we do find vehicles with form factor which can carry up to 250 kilos, and that's something where we have seen is performing really well, and the need of the hour is for the OEMs to come and address that market at a lower cost of ownership. The TCO should be lesser, that he is willing to, get into that.
So I would like to add here is like we already have tie up on that segment with Porter, and that segment is already there and is already felt, and we have a lot of people, but the ownership need to be there in that segment. We have seen a lot of people do manufacture e-rickshaws, L3 category vehicles, but the kind of quality and commitment which is required is that actually missing. So that has been the challenge which is faced. And the other side is still the like Porter, if you talk about, and other companies, logistic companies or delivery companies, the demand need to be created because it can definitely fill the gap. So very rightly said, L3 category or e-rickshaw category product uh, fall just exactly in between on the both price front also and the load carrying capacity front also. So those kind of products will definitely add value.
Sure. I think thank you all panelists and thank you audience for your patient listening.